Okay, I'll do a quick intro. When we did this, we thought, let's get Gerard to chat with us. It's very fashionable nowadays to call these things fireside chats. But Singapore, we got fireside, right? And so we didn't know what to call it. I decided to call it something very pretentious, the village elder, etc., etc. And Gerard cringed when he saw that, but it's basically clickbait. But the thing is, this thing, I remember when I first met Phyllis from Beautiful People. And so Beautiful People is kind of a spin-off from Beyond. It started as a befriending or mentoring program. And she said that, she would, with some colleagues, make an annual pilgrimage to see Gerard, and he will give them some wisdom and say interesting things. And then they will, wow. And then I would say, wow, is this some kind of special retreat that community workers have in the mountains or something? And then she said, no lah, just kopitiam, I thought that's great. And so actually this session is organized by the Community Development Network, and basically it's a kind of decentralized way of organizing a forum, and anyone who wanted to organize a session could. And so Santosh and Anna and Shamil and Jimsy and also Ranga's implicated in everything, decided that we should have this chat. Santosh is from OP, and he will be an important force in civic tech space and beyond. Hannah, who's so committed to this that she's joining us even though she's in Oman right now and still doing community development work there. She and I did a case study on Beyond Social Services quite recently and have been inspired and became a much bigger fan of Beyond than we thought we could ever be. Jim C is my co-conspirator, ex-colleague. Shamil, also my colleague, but he did an interesting failure festival conversation in the forum itself, and Ranga, of course, Deputy ED of Beyond. And so we are the co-moderators, and we basically thought we're gonna chat with Gerard anyway, but why not just kind of open it to others so more can participate and benefit from it. So we are generous like that. But of course, Gerard is the most generous for agreeing to do this. We'll start with some questions for Gerard, but feel free to chip in, and you can type your questions in the chat if you want, but we will prioritize those who want to speak up, and then you can ask your questions and Gerard will respond. Otherwise, we'll pick. Yeah.
Show your face, that will get you answered first.
Yeah, don't show face, don't get questions answered. Just to get things rolling, there were questions that was we wanted to start with, and it is this: what are the most surprising lessons about working with about doing community work that you've learned over your long career, Gerard?
Well, I think it really depends on who you define as your community. In my role, there are several different groups of communities. And what really surprised me, was that the question? What really surprised me was that communities where people have, what really surprised me, those who have find it very hard to give. And that kind of surprised me tremendously, because when I work with the disadvantaged communities, people who have very little, they have no problem giving, and they give with a lot of heart, and they give without second thought. And, they give because they believe that it's only correct to do so. Of course, you can get quite cynical about that, because you can also say they give to survive, because they do say this, they do say things like, it's okay, I have today, I give today, but maybe tomorrow I don't have, so tomorrow I need to take enough. So I guess for them, these days I'm not sure if I'm still surprised by that, but I didn't feel that they were transactional when they made that kind of statement. I thought they were being, they really understood what relationships are for, and a relationship as an asset. Maybe that's the only asset they have. On the other hand, when I work with communities, who have a lot of resources, well, when you want to give something, the number of questions that they ask, and and after asking like so many questions, they still turn you down because they are so cocksure that they shouldn't give you, because if they do, they'll be betraying their own logic, whatever that logic is, lah. And that sometimes can be quite demoralizing. But I've learned to see that this is the way the world is, and and because of the way the world it is like that, it's actually quite easy to love the people who don't have. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, often wondered whether the taxi driver that gives $50, the kind of sacrifice is often greater than the corporate donor that gives 50,000, right?
I think yeah, that wasn't quite what I meant to say, but yeah, why maybe I wanted to show is the way they look at the world is very, very different. Uh, those who have, they look at the world as how to safeguard what they have, and maybe those who don't have got nothing to safeguard or what, so they're quite generous. Yeah. I would have thought it was the other way. If you have, you'll be a bit more generous. Well,
Uh,
anyway, yeah. I'm not sure if that was the opening answer you expected.
this is always great. It's always surprising. Another question is how is it that Beyond developed a reputation for being able to work with the toughest youth that nobody else could or wanted to work with?
I I think it was just by being in Bukit Ho Swee. Bukit Ho Swee, I mean, by being physically located at Bukit Ho Swee. Bukit Ho Swee, if you are in Singapore and you're familiar with the history, I mean, it used to be notorious for all sorts of criminal activity, lah, so to speak, right? And and it was not just Bukit Ho Swee, but how we used to call it, postal code, postal district number 3, used to be notorious. And because we are placed here, right, and the kids that come to us, well, they were notorious, so to speak. I mean, there were a higher percentage of those who didn't go to school, and there was a lot more gang activity, and in a way, they became our best teachers. So if the answer is how did we become so good at, having this reputation of what's this again, caring for every child, or the notorious ones, it's because we had notorious teachers, maybe because the kids were our teachers. And and that's the way I see it, actually. I'd say it's all our members. Some of you call them service users or clients. Actually, they are our best teachers. That's what this work is about. I think that's exactly who are the people that we have to learn from, because these are the people that we are supposed to support, and we are supposed to be on, not support, but we are supposed to have a valuable presence in their life, whatever that may be. And of course, we have to learn from them. So that's how I see it. I think after you have learned from them, then yeah. So the answer is
What did you learn from them, these kids?
we learned what it meant to. We learned that actually they were just living. It wasn't like they were intentionally evil or trying to do something bad, or trying to be tough. They were just like any one of us, and it's just a different language that they are speaking. I don't mean the Chinese or the Hokkien or the vulgarities or anything. I mean, they they speak with their behaviors, they speak with their aspirations, they speak with the choices that they have made. And what are they actually saying? I think they are just saying that this is how I live. And it is us who are unable to decipher that. And so we learn how to decipher, and we learn to see that a lot of such behaviors come from a place of pain, actually. And we do have to try to understand their pain and speak to their pain rather than to speak to the behaviors. Uh, so that was a period in our history that we were very direct working with young people, and after a while, I guess that knowledge stuck also because several young people had no place to go, so a lot of referring agencies were quite confident that the moment they refer to us, we will take, and we would lah, because I guess my colleagues back then, we were younger and stronger and a lot more gung ho, and you come up with maxims like no child is too rough and tough to turn around and stuff like that. And yeah, there was quite a bit of pride then. I mean, that kind of practitioner pride. Yeah.
When I hear it now, it sounds very enlightened. But uh, was it something that you arrived at or beyond arrived at so early on in the game that uh,
I
they
don't think we arrived or anything. We just were thrown into it, And even for myself, one of my one experience that was that kind of defined the skill sets and the work or whatever I tried to do was very early in as a youth worker. We used to start work at 2 o'clock because we had to finish work at 10. And so it was quite okay lah. I'm not back then. I wasn't an early riser, so I was quite happy. I say, good, and sleep a bit longer, and then can go swimming before coming to work. Best job, right? So I was thinking, damn good, right? So I was thinking, yeah, good job. So I was just a youth worker, not very many years, maybe 1 2 years, less than that maybe. And, so I woke up in the morning, having breakfast, and turned the pages of the Straits Times, and then I got a sinking feeling because I read about a fight in Bukit Osuya, and I read about how somebody has died, and so with that sinking feeling, I come back to the office. I think, yes, we got this office already, and all these kids started coming into the office and chatter, very nervous, what's going on and all. And we knew it was about this fight. But okay, so the long story short, right? Cut the long story short. Eventually, we had to go and get these kids represented by lawyers and stuff like that, and many lessons I learned along the way. I was very young, so I learned about the world and the times like I visited so many lawyers, and many of them didn't even want to talk. It was like, do you understand that this is a capital a case? And then I say, yeah, because there's still murder and there's the death penalty. And then they say, all right, before we go any further, we need $10,000 on the table. I went to so many, and after a while, I got used to it. I say, oh, okay, so that's how it works, right? Justice, you need $10,000. And then I have the parents of all these kids who were like on a capital charge, really crying because it was very tough, right? And yeah, so that actually got me questioning how to think about it. What is it that I want to do? And that kind of shape and define the choices I made earlier, like standing up for these kids, standing up for these people. And eventually there was a pro bono lawyer who still is our pro bono lawyer. So we've grown old together. uh, So his name is Panli actually. So he runs his law firm Wee Day and Lim, and we always thought it was wrong because it should be Wee Lay and Team because Wee Lim Tay, right? So we come and drink tea basically in Hokkien, Wee Lim Tay. Uh, but uh, but he stuck with us. I mean, he's been an important resource for our community and for our kids and all that over as long over 30, 40 years, whatever time that I've worked here. And he would still answer the call if I called him today. So that's another community. I mean, he and his friends and all that that are very important for us. So sorry, I ramble, but it was just the the way things were, the climate then. That this was the challenge back then. Kids not in school, kids getting into gangs, kids doing drugs, and kids just dying, killing themselves. So that was it lah. So and you stand up for these kids, then maybe the rest will come our way, no issue lah. Because I remember after that we started doing school social work, and then we started getting complaints. These kids are terrible. These kids are what. Then we walk into the school and we say, "What is the teacher talking about? Everyone's so cool down here." And we sit down and then we just say, "Hey, yeah, knock it off." And yeah, so then the teacher say, "What do y'all do? Miracle." I say, "Nonsense lah. In the first place, I don't know how you all look at all these young people as though they were some monsters, which they weren't. They weren't. Yeah. So I guess it's our threshold, and in a way, growing up in Bukit Ho Swee helped lah. Yeah.
I mean, you say like it's that it became like that because the situation demanded it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious because any other organization in the same space dealing with the same problem might have gone a very different route. And I was curious whether whether the DNA of Beyond was a mix of both the circumstances at Bukit Ho Swee, but did the Catholic nuns have any imprint on the style of community work?
I mean, the Catholic faith and the Catholic missionaries, they believe in this thing called a preferential option for the poor. And that's very much in Catholic social teaching. So in a way, Beyond has some roots, and Catholics were just part of the roots. I think of the roots that I would be more proud of is the cooperation among members of a community, regardless of their religious beliefs or their political associations, right at the very beginning. You had Anglicans, you had Buddhist monks, you had all this service club, business people, and all coming together to do something. So that's one part. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is perhaps not, now that you mentioned it, it's not so much the Catholic nuns. Also, when I first worked here, right, there were two ladies in the office and myself, or maybe three ladies here. You need to count the nun, right? So yes, three ladies. Sorry. I hope no religious here, but yeah. So there are three ladies and me, and where was I? Yeah, so there are all these kids out there and so much work to do and all. Then close to after office hours, there'll be lots and lots of people trickling in, and these were volunteers. Not volunteers from somewhere, but they were volunteers who live in the neighborhood. Okay, maybe 3 bus stops away at most. But when these people came, right, they didn't see like they were there to do something or what. They just came because it was their neighborhood. And don't you dare tell them that their neighborhood sucked, right? I mean, with all these criminals and all that. No, they were never gangsters or bad boys or anything. They were just my neighbors, and they wanted to do something about it. I guess that rubbed off on me because at that point I couldn't understand. I really couldn't understand what drove these people. I went there to do a job. It was just to earn a salary, but these guys really impressed on me lah. That they come every day and they stay so late, and there's so much camaraderie, and they never saw the difficult children as anything but their neighbors, kids that they had to look after. Yeah.
Can I jump in quickly? Yeah, it was very interesting. Where I'd like to go back where you talk about, when you started doing school social work, and then, can you hear me, Gerard?
Yeah, a bit louder would be good.
Bit louder, okay. So I wanted to ask about, when you mentioned you started doing school social work, and then the school would contact you and say, how do you, these are all monsters and all that. So it got me thinking as well. Recently, I started thinking about how it's in Singapore we should look more into this restorative trauma informed
Yeah,
educational practices, right?
yeah.
But then looking at Beyond actually has done it from a long, long, long time ago, before the term trauma-informed restorative practices became like trendy. Like that is the lens that Beyond workers have taken to look at, like you say, you recognize the pain or the hurt that come. You don't look at the behavior, you don't react to the behavior, and you look into the pain that, and a lot of them are coming from a place of hurt, right? But a lot of the times in schools, especially with like kids who are out of school or school dropouts and all that, a lot of the times schools kind of demonize them, saying, this one gone case, cannot make it, like all that. What do you think, if or if there is a chance, the role that Beyond could play in sort of advocating for more trauma informed restorative sort of practices within the education system itself, seeing as you guys have practiced this a lot and you've had a lot of success for many years?
We tried, but we gave up. Yeah. So we did try. Uh, a lot of you know that I write this thing every week, but maybe some of you don't know that for 6 years I wrote similar thing that was targeted for schools, not every week, but once a month, trying to highlight the successes that we had in terms of trying to build restorative schools, or trying to build a restorative climate in the schools. Um, I realize that you cannot do this without a larger change in the structure. The schools are not organized to do this. Our schools are organized to build, what's the word? To mold the future, or mold the future, or something like, what's their tagline, MOE's tagline. That's what our schools have been organized to do, have been set up to do, to produce people who score well, people who can join the workforce. This whole restorative practice thing and all that, there's a philosophy, there are principles that you cannot just plonk into any school, because those structures are a lot stronger. Eventually you get snuffed out, which was what we felt like when we finally decided to stop. So as I mean, young, you go to, you just go into any fight and do your best, right? And think you're going to score the knockout blow. After a while, you realize, hey, actually, I don't have so much energy. I don't want to go and spend my time here, because you cannot win. You're just going to a fight that you're not going to win. And I won't say that the 6 year span was useless, because whoever we met benefited, and we had good relationships with many teachers and even officials from MOE and all them. We made some good friends and all that. So I won't say it was bad. And the kids, most importantly, the kids then really benefited, I think. Uh, and there was one story, I was just reminded about it this morning or this afternoon, because we're talking about security in the school, and the whole idea of closed circuit camera TVs came up. And then this triggered a memory, because there was a school that the principal called and said that the principal had just moved in, and she was quite angry, because she said that her predecessor had fixed up all this CCTVs in the school. And she said it's terrible because despite the TVs, the kids were acting up. They I don't know what they do. They know they're on camera, so they even act. They play to the camera, so to speak. And so he said, that's ridiculous. He said, my school must never have such a climate. So asked us what to do. And we came in, we got the teachers to play games with the kids, do things and all that. And that was a nice 1 year because end of the year, there was a big graduation party. And all the teachers and the kids were all dressed up to the nines in their ties and all that kind of thing. And they had a good party. And the cameras came down. That was one of the biggest success. I mean, there was no need for these cameras. Trust is not built by fear. And maybe that's a bugbear I have about this country. You want to catch killer? What was this? You want to catch killer litter? Put camera. You want to catch whatever thing? Put camera. You got so many cameras around here. More than Trump could ever put on the Mexican border. We already have so many cameras here. Yeah. And that's reality. That's our reality here. And it's so ingrained in our culture that we either catch, we punish, we deter, even when deterrence doesn't work. Yeah. But so how do you change this, right? Yeah, this is one of the things that I tell you about it. Hopefully all of us can do something. Did I answer? Yeah,
Yes.
Can I ask the question? Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, Gerard, thank you again for joining, and thank you, Justin, for organizing this. My question is basically about listening to how the teachers talk about those kids, and in a very cynical manner, very jaded manner, and it's quite common actually if you speak to people who have done it for a while, that they have like, yeah, they're like that, whatever, right? But you don't hear this from how you talk actually about people that you sort of work with. So how do you sort of keep yourself from being jaded or cynical? I'm assuming you're not lah, but how do you keep yourself from because it's difficult. You've been doing it for a long time. So yeah. Is it because of religious thingy or whatever, some book you read or some philosophy you grew up with? I don't know, some musician. I don't know. Thanks.
There's something called a glass of beer, but aside from that, I think we need our own community, and I think one of the most painful things is when we don't have one. And I think my colleagues used to complain. They always say that, why you all work so hard? You work so hard. Then I just keep quiet and say, but you also hard, right? I mean, so it's like you're coming together, people supporting each other. I think that's my answer, lah. We need people around us. I think there's this nonsense about us being strong, independent, and whatever. I don't believe in that. I think no, yeah, I don't believe in that. I think we are very dependent on each other. We may not care to admit it, but we are. And even something like that. I mean, this platform, I would say, it does give me. I mean, I before joining, I'm like, oh God, I go do this. But as I talk, I think it does give me energy because people want to listen, right? And in a way, for the next 90 minutes or what, you are my community. I mean, in a way, yeah, we've come together because there's a shared interest in spending 90 minutes together and trying to talk to each other.
Just to add on to Shamil's question, since I was chatting with Gerard just previously, and then he mentioned he was reading Noam Chomsky, and I'm thinking like, wow, I don't think any other ED of any social service agency is reading Noam Chomsky. And so one of the questions we had was, what the hell is Gerard reading? So what are some of the literature you have read over the years that you felt were transformative professionally or personally, that might have influenced the work that you do and beyond?
I don't have much school. So when I first got the job, the first day I showed up to work, it was Vasu rang call. And, oh, you're there? I said, yeah, I showed up for work, yes. and then he said, you look behind you, that bookcase, and you look at all those books there and all those files there, you should start reading and figuring out what all this youth work is about. So when I first started work, I read a lot of stuff about what detached youth work is and why is youth work important and what's the value of youth work and what is the definition. And so I will say that a lot of my reading has been very much related to what I'm called to do at a particular point in time, and it's very work related in a way. I think when we were going into restorative practices and all, I'm like reading everything about restorative practices. And when I was training as family therapist, then of course, I was reading everything about that. And in management, yeah, of course, I read about all those management leadership stuff. And I mean, that dossier that Santos compiled and shared recently, I don't know what the topic of the forum was, but it showed so many leadership styles and stuff like that. Those things I do read. I don't read like so deeply, but yeah, I do read those things. I do think about those things. I do read about community building, what it is, and of course, the books by McKnight, blog, and are important. But perhaps what is more important is what influenced them or who influenced them. People like Frere, people like Ivan Illich. These are more the important texts, and we have to revisit all the time. And Olinsky, of course, right? Of course, Olinsky, but so it's important to kind of I draw quite a bit of strength from that. I have inspiration from that now, and I think that if you want to do this work, it's not about reading one thing or other. It's really trying to read as many things as possible. I like this is really guy what the Harari guy, the guy Sapiens guy. I like that. I think the next thing I'm going to read is meta modernism thing. That's the next thing I'm going to read. And
yeah, you promised Ansu you will read it.
Yeah. So and yeah, it's often work related. I got friends, academics like you, like Frank sends me a lot of stuff as well that it's guided me. And yeah, so two things I want to read going up is this new book by Michael Sandel, and now then Ansu has recommended this metamodernism thing. I'm going to check that out. Yeah.
Anybody want to ask questions? If not, we got lots of questions to ask. Now's your chance.
And you don't have to switch on your video, man.
Yeah, Gerard, I'm curious. Hema here.
Hi, Hema. Hi.
Yes, let me pop in my video. All right. I'm just curious, right? Because when we talk about community building, and especially when we say about low-income families, the current climate is that all the rental blocks are clustered together in a common space, right? So in such an environment, there's a lot of familiarity, and then you are also able to meet your neighbors very, very often, and you are really growing up with the community that everyone knows everyone. So in that sense, there's a stronger sense of belonging to the neighborhood from the beginning itself. I'm just curious, right? Like, how would be community building if I'm going to remove the space as an element? Because when you talk about village, when you talk about low-income communities and neighborhoods and all, there's an aspect of space there. right? So do you feel that people can still come together with a strong shared purpose despite having the opportunity to have regularity or familiarity from the beginning?
I mean, in theory, it is possible. There's a different type of community. I mean, there is this community development network. We all come together once a month. Not all of us can make it all the time, but we still come together once a month. There's different. A community of place, of course, is slightly different from a community of interest, which is also very slightly different from a community of blood. And also, but they're all communities, and each type of community will have their own characteristic, and how do we actually value those characteristics in a way that enable those communities to thrive? Like, but why are you asking that? I mean, I thought you were going to say that. So what's going to happen because the government's going to get rid of public rental flats? So beyond doesn't need to exist or cannot exist because that's exactly our modus operandi, right? We go to public rental flats and now the government wants to tear all them down and disperse all of them. And yeah, so that is a challenge going forward. And that's one reason it's good to be friends with someone like Santos, for that matter, because he's so big on technology and bringing people together, connecting people even without being at the same place. So the virtual space is becoming more and more important, and in the real, my guess it will be extremely important when all the rental flats are gone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wait, have I missed something? What's happening to the rental flats in Singapore?
In the name of social integration, they are trying to get rid of all the rental blocks.
Really?
So new blocks have been built where there are 2 or 3 where the rental units are dispersed within the purchase block.
Uh-huh.
So I visited one of our interns. I went home with him the other day, and he explained to me where he's living. Actually has rental blocks, had rental units. Yeah.
I suppose if you disperse poverty, it's not so visible. That's our strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember now. Yeah, I read about it. And then I forgot about it. And now I remember again.
Well, maybe that's a good segue to the question we also want to ask. If Gerard, you became Prime Minister, what are the community-related policies you would change? Or even not just Prime Minister, if you ran the People's Association, what would you change?
I think you have to give communities back to the people. Right now, People's Association doesn't really belong to the people. It belongs to the bureaucracy. And but there's nothing wrong with bureaucracy. They can understand that their role is to continually transfer more power to the people. And how to do that? First thing is to generously release spaces that in this rich country's infrastructure for community usage. Community centers should really be for communities, and my big bugbear, community centers have been used in the name of asset optimization and given to the likes of fast food chains and what have you. So community centers, the vision of the MP or whoever's in charge seems to think that a good community center must have McDonald's, whatever it is, and all that kind of thing, because then it'll be convenient for my residents. But what they've done is they have colonized the community with more capitalism. I'm not saying you cannot have food there in a community center, but who runs a food space, and why do you need to rent it out to get more rental? Because probably McDonald's can afford to pay the CC a lot more rent than, let's say, a resident with a satay shop or whatever, probably can't. And so, that whole thinking, I mean, what do they need to collect rent for? I mean, that space is there's they already set aside the budget, and what are they going to do with all the profits anyway? Are they like going to redistribute back to the community? They know they are going to just repaint the CC every 5 years or something like that. I'm like, oh God, okay. So it's not really a community center. If people really want to go to McDonald's, they know where it is. They don't have to go to the community center. There must be, community center must put the community in the center, not businesses into the center. Now, and having said that, as a non-profit, non-profits are non-profits, but we need to we need to we need to be able to see that the economy is important. The economy is a big part of the agenda of a non-profit organization. But of course, I'm not talking about the capital land type of economy. I'm talking about the economy that our membership, the people in our neighborhoods are actually a part of. And right now, actually, in this country, there's very little of that. There's very little of it, right? I mean, because even the kopitiams are no longer one tauke, they are often chains. If you notice, you go around, you know what some of these kopitiam chains are? It started with kopitiam, of course, but now you have B22, you have One How, you have, I don't know, you walk around, you'll notice some of this brandings, and they are very often run by enterprising businessmen who then want to profit from the rental because that's how they make their money, and then you have other people coming in and other businessmen taking on employing foreign workers to cook chicken rice. I remember the first time I had chicken rice cooked by a Chinese person, I didn't know what it was in Chinatown. I swear it wasn't chicken rice. and that's what happens because we just lose all our heritage, we lose everything in that we are proud of as a community. Yeah, so there's really too much focus on business, and like I said, NPO must focus on business, but what type of business, you know?
Anyone have questions?
Martina, were you going to say something just now? You were, right? Like,
Unmute. Is it unmute? Yeah, I was going to say, what's your next biggest goal or vision? I mean, I know your vision, as in the beyond vision. Now, what's your next thing in your mind?
what's beyond trying to do is that?
Yeah, you, not just beyond.
I am of course looking at how this thing can go beyond me, lah. Right, that's one of the things I'm looking at, and yeah, going off in a nice, graceful way. That's one thing that I'm looking at, of course. Yeah, and that would be an important goal for me. I don't want to live for rank. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm not just about to do that. So it's very enmeshed with beyond goals. What I really want to do. I really want to make each of the neighborhoods that or at least facilitate that, and get each of the neighborhoods to have their own strong identity. Over here, every new town is the same now. Capital Land or Fraser's Mall, and it's just plonk all over the place. But been having some conversations with some of my colleagues, how they are recognizing the cultural assets within their community. I find that so important. Yesterday, one of them Macy was talking to me and quite excitedly showing me photographs of this old man playing this Chinese instruments and all that kind of thing. And I said, that's beautiful, right? This is a wonderful asset that you have in your community. How do you actually safeguard this asset, and how do you actually honor this asset as a vital part of community? And that got us thinking, this is community work. It's not professionals like us who have grand ideas, how to write a proposal and say we're going to do something so that we get auxiliaries, you know. This is really about looking at this Chinese man playing, and I listened to the story. I'm thinking, wow, you know, here's a man who had three strokes, but when he has that funny looking instrument on his hand, he doesn't look a bit dead. He's so alive, right? He can play that music and all that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, isn't that so fantastic? I mean, that he's so alive, and when he plays that, so many people gather and other people start playing and all. And and what value is this in the Lengkok Bahru neighborhood that matter? This is in Lengkok Bahru. So we don't honor this enough, and this is the work that I hope Beyond can do, is to try and integrate these people with other people in the neighborhood, and we can be quite confident. I think I shared in a video that Justin did, was how maybe Lengkok Bahru neighborhood can be distinctly different from the Whampoa neighborhood. Or if there's some similarities, good, we have a festival, you know. That's it. You know, but that's beautiful. I mean, then people get a more associational life. We have now market commodified everything. You know, we have said that you want something, you go buy something. You know, everything is a business and all that. But this is the kind of association among people that quite lost, that we want to rekindle. Yeah.
Gerard, if an undergraduate comes up to you and says, I'm a fan of Beyond, I want to be a community worker, would you encourage the person to join you first? And second of all, what would you be looking for in somebody like that? What traits would you look for before you decide whether this person is cut out to be a community worker?
I mean, I will. One of the things we do is we often discourage people from joining, because not because we don't want them to join, but because we want them to really think very carefully and come in with their eyes open. So that's one of the things that we do. And what's the trait, right? The trait is probably embracing ambiguity, lah. That, you know, you really believe that ambiguity is important, and that's one of the things. And maybe also to understand what exactly is a non-profit organization and what place that has in the country, and to have the courage to say that this animal, for one of a better word, I mean, is what I'm willing to be a part of. So I put it quite simply. I mean, if you work for any other company, then it's quite easy, right? You have a service, you have a product, you sell, and then you generate income. Surplus incomes gets put in and reinvested, and that's how the company grows. But for a non-profit, what is it then? You know, the people who utilizes your services and stuff like that, they are not the people who are going to pay. And so, who are your customers, and where's your revenue source, and how do you actually sustain yourself, and what can you actually expect in terms of your career progression and the material comforts that you're going to get in life and stuff like that. I think people need to be really quite realistic that what is this space about, and are they prepared for the challenge in staying in that space? So that is what I would look for. I think people need to come in with a very realistic understanding. And of course, I have to, or my colleagues have to be the one to explain that, hey, do you know what this actually is? I think you want a company that's stable and it's going to have a career path and all. I just tell them, hey, hello, you join the government. You know, I don't know. Go work for MSF. Sorry, Frank, you put up a hand, right? Somebody put up their hand. No, I thought you put up your hand, Frank. Oh yeah, Martina.
Justine, your question is very relevant. I sent my son to Gerard because my son wanted to do, social work. Remember, Gerard, you had lunch with my son.
Hey, what happened?
Yeah.
You came back. No, I got worried.
Rejected, is it? Rejected.
No, actually, he was scared after hearing Gerard. I think I think Gerard's expectations were well laid out, that there's good intention, but I think it's a calling that is not necessarily easy to say yes to. I mean, is an aspiration, you think you want to do it, but after hearing really the knocks, you can get all the knocks in life to be in one. I say, how are you getting back to Uncle Gerard? When are you writing back to him? Then he think, I think I'm not ready. So I think, send some youth to speak to him, and then I think those who really say yes, then they will definitely be doing the right thing. Because if they are scared after hearing him, then it's a little bit not quite ready internally. I feel that's like my son. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for the chat. It wake him up a lot.
Yeah, I hope you are not so discouraged, or maybe I did you a favor. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's good to then talk about what are the rewards. I mean, it's such a difficult job. It's tough. You stay up until like 10, 11 o'clock. But what are the rewards then?
I think I wouldn't be able to embrace life for what it is if I was not in this work. Yeah, I don't know what I would have done if I wasn't doing this work. But this work puts me in a position to see so much of the world, so very much of the world. I mean, I not just in the public rental housing or whatever the organization exists for, but the rest of the world, the rest of the country, helps me understand policies. It helps me understand what the government is doing and what the ill effects. I think I learn to see life for what it is. I'm not saying that I can understand everything, but at the moment, it's such a broad view that I think is so fulfilling, such a privilege to have such a view. Yeah.
Dijin has asked a question in the chat. She said, he or she, I don't know, I'm curious to hear what your vision of an inclusive society looks like.
I won't know how to answer you, Dijin, apart from a very textbook type of answer. I think an inclusive society starts with one of the things is like our laws have to be a bit more inclusive. What's that law about gay rights and making sex between two men of 3, 7, whatever 7? Stuff like that have to go. Stuff like that really have to go for me. I think they set the tone of what an inclusive society should be. So I think there should be less discriminatory laws. That's one of the things, and Parliament or our politicians or anyone leadership starts speaking a language of inclusion, a language of diversity, as opposed to OB markers and I don't know what else they talk about, but about self-help groups or whatever, I think we can start to learn to talk about diversity and inclusion. That for me is important signal when society is becoming a bit more inclusive. Or for political participation for that matter. I mean, it's almost like, look, I'm not politically affiliated to any of these political parties, but no, the general rhetoric is often there's either one party or the other, you know. But why can't there be some shared space? Because the shared space is also about inclusion and about diversity of views. You know, so things like that, our society, I mean, right from government or whatever, you know, it's just diversity is not something that, while we speak about it in terms of being a multiracial society, you know, actually it's more than that. It cannot be just that we have peace, multiracially and all. And, yeah.
Singwei is asking, how is it like for you when what your beliefs in community building is very different from the government, and also how do you deal with people in power who might that's that one from us, we tag along, people from power who might find your ideas and philosophy different from the establishment, and how do you navigate that?
I think there's enough space, right? You know, although we are a small country, there should be enough space for the difference of views, and what is the context? It often depends on the context, and I would say that if my reading of the context is that it is important to maintain the relationship or stay in that space, then there's just one word for it. It's about compromise. And how do you compromise? I mean, Zelensky was quite a champion of this. He said that, hey, come on, get real. There's a lot about compromise. He often says this. They said, yes, you go in there and you get 30% of the bargain for that matter, but you got 30%. You're still in the game, so to speak. And with perseverance and better organizing, it may be 40% in a little while. But if you're not even there, you are 0%, then you're not even at a table. I mean, but then of course you choose which tables you want to sit on. I'm not saying that every table you should go and sit on, but if let's say you decide to sit on that table, then it's really about compromise and listen and keep some level of the status quo. I'm not there to tear anything down or anything like that. But that's the only way. I mean, and maybe one factor is that people don't stay long enough to see through the compromise or to follow through the compromise. And in that sense, I think my colleagues are beyond. Many have stayed for many years, and the perseverance in doing so, I would say, it's a big critical success factor for whatever success that we have had. Because we outlast the MPs. And yeah, I'm just joking, but we outlast a lot of the civil servants or people in positions. Some we don't, so we still get flagged. The thing is, that, you know, perseverance is important because, you know, if you are thinking about organizing community and building community, you have to stay the course one. Then you go in on a compromise. You know the guy's not going to be there. The next one comes in. There's a chance to stretch it a little bit. So it's a long game, very, very long game. And people who stay in this have to be quite willing to take that long game. And one thing I must say is a big sacrifice. I can stay because I am the boss. I get better paid. I want to be very honest about that. I can't imagine some of my colleagues. I feel quite sorry. I think, not that you don't pay people, we don't have that type of money, and how, you know? So people have moved on because they have other family commitments, they need a bigger salary and stuff like that. And I mean, I've been the boss for a long time, so proportionately, I get more money, yeah? I'm not sure I could do this if I wasn't doing this, because you know, I'm not in this position. So I've been very, very fortunate in that sense.
when I was doing research on Beyond, I also noticed that Gerard donates a lot of his money back to Beyond.
How do you know this?
Read your annual report.
No, I didn't.
I saw it somewhere. But on that note, we have a surprise for you, Gerard. Instead of you, just talking, we thought it would be nice, since you're sharing with us, that we would bring together some people to say some nice things and reflect about you. So it's like a mini surprise tribute, of which I kind of co-conspired with Ranga to do. And first, Ranga, do you want to take over from here?
Thanks, Justin. You actually specialize in getting people in trouble, huh? Okay, so since Martina is not on mute, maybe we will get Martina first to share. So Martina has known Gerard for more than 20 years now, Martina, as a volunteer who started the learning program in Beyond. And would you like to share a few things that you have seen Gerard take on, your experience with him?
I support a charity where I see the person in charge actually being with the charity and being with the people, rather than just someone behind an office desk or a computer. So that's why when I first saw Gerard, he didn't believe I believe in him. That's true. He didn't believe I believe him. And so when I went down and see what they do, I see how he do it. And it's just like they are there. They just see what needs to be done, and then they just make things happen. And I also like the concept of his very unassumptuous kind of way of doing things. Like he has his way of speaking that you just want to listen, right? You know what I mean? I remember being at his class under one of those Lian Foundation one. And then he come in, his usual self, he come in, no big tie or jacket. And then he shared about Beyond. And, I think all of us were really listening. And then you can see some other charity chief coming in, and sometimes the way it is being presented and shared, it's not something that they went through. And what I really like is that, Gerard was there with the people and for the people, like, the people that he cared for, you can see it just from him speaking. That's what I really like and has stayed the course with supporting Beyond. Gerard, kudos.
Thank you, Martina. And I think it's people like Martina who actually contribute to the community we are building, because it's a long-standing support through various roles that Martina has been on, and bringing in her colleagues as well as her friends to participate. And that's the kind of relationship I think Gerard builds. So it is not, the community is not based on transaction. It's really the relationships that are meaningful. And Frank, your turn to now share.
Oh, my mic is on.
Yes.
You can hear me. Yeah. The topic is, I found that quite inspiring, a village elder in modern times. And I was thinking, what made a village elder in old times? And I thought, okay, probably he was old. Yeah. That means from the younger generation's viewpoint, he was always there before them. A village elder in the old times was a good listener and a good storyteller. A storyteller who could tell stories which made you thinking. And he knew many people. He could be impartial. He could connect people. And he liked to give, and he was very good in taking perspective of many other people. A village elder in old times was also respected by other people and was also able to represent the village externally if necessary. Today in Singapore, the villages are 25 to 60 stories high. Yeah, these villages, these Singaporean villages, are connected with the whole world via the internet. we call them meanwhile global villages. People from many countries live there. Many people don't know their neighbors anymore. If someone needs support, help is expected from the government or from professionals, not necessarily from the neighbors. And tradition in these modern villages has lost to the concept of innovation. Innovation has become more important. On the other hand, a lot of scientific studies show that a functioning village life still protects us from illness, from crime, from loneliness, and from poverty. We are happier and healthier when we live like we lived in villages. The Harvard longitudinal study, for example, shows this as the paramount result. It is sort of a paradox. Villages are outdated and old-fashioned, and at the same time, they exert an almost, I would say, almost romantical attraction on us. Yeah, we live in a city, but we long for relationships and interconnectedness that only existed in villages. A clear contradiction, I would say, or one could say, scientists say, an anachronism. So something which isn't actually together in the same time. For me, Gerard embodies this anachronistic paradox. Yeah. I can easily imagine Gerard in a kampong or in a European medieval village, yeah, where he deals with the worries, toys, quarrels of the neighbors. At the same time, Gerard is in very close contact with hundreds of people all over the world, yeah, draws inspirations, international inspiration from all over this planet. And if he could, he would also use the whole galaxy, I think. Yeah. And he has also left traces in many places of this world without even having been there. Yeah. For example, at my university, a lot of people talk about Gerard. Yeah. Also people who haven't seen him. Yeah. Gerard has innovative ideas which are often years ahead of their time. That means for some people, these ideas often seem crazy at their time, yeah, because they are so much ahead. He is very acquainted in scientific discourses, I would say like a professor. However, he can also have meaningful conversations with hawkers and hairdressers, like he was one of them. Yeah, I would say, Gerard, you are a sort of speaking with Immanuel Kant, a citizen of two worlds, a citizen of an ancient, stable, and small world, and at the same time, a citizen of a modern, permanently changing, almost limitless world. Maybe this is why Gerard has such a great fascination for me and for many other people. Because like other interesting thinkers, Gerard seems to overlook a large span of time and a large span of ideas. And therefore he can integrate into his thinking, which seems for other people contradictions, not fitting together. Yeah, for me personally, Gerard is the most important professional and personal friend with whom I can discuss philosophical ideas, and at the same time we can steal a horse, like we would say in German.
Have you all stolen a horse, Frank?
We have stolen quite a few horses, actually, together. But I won't go deeply into that. What I like most is that Gerard is not efficient. Yeah. Gerard often doesn't reach his goals, but that is not the most important thing for him. Yeah. I like most that Gerard is what I would say a relational thinker who likes to build ideas and projects on relations and who on relationships, yeah, or on a relational rationality which connects people and preserves people, rather than other thinkers who are more into an instrumental rationality which want to achieve goals and want to achieve change. I think Gerard is not one of these types of thinkers, but a more relational thinker. And I'm really looking forward, if Corona one day allows that, to our next adventures, stealing some horses in a, let's say, in a meta modern world or whatever, post-modern village.
But thank you. Sounds like my retirement speech, you know. Frank will with a retiring professor or something, and then I'll get out of the way. Like, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Frank, for sharing. I think you guys go back a long way. I think you were getting up to no good as young men and still getting up to no good as older men now. So that is
30 years.
Yes. So now I'm going to ask Justin. I know Robin is on this call as well. You know, Justin, how did you fall in love with Gerard and why?
Hey, voila, this wasn't, it's not part of the program. Fall in love, who can resist falling in love with Gerard? My gosh, I mean, I don't know, I'm too embarrassed to say. I don't know, Gerard's amazing. I mean, he's exactly what Frank is saying. I mean, they go back so much, so I only know him for a while, but I think everyone who touches Beyond and gets in, you know, interacts with Gerard they get transformed, and I was transformed, and sometimes the people can't put it into words. You know, I was interviewing board members on, you know, what do you like about Beyond, and they'll say, oh, it's so different, such a different charity from the other charities I've worked on, and but they don't know how to put it in words, and I feel that Gerard's like this streetwise philosopher, right? And he isn't afraid to tell you the things the way they are. I mean, he's humble. He's like Kokila mentioned that, you know, he's like the Buddha. He has no ego. I've never met anyone who has less ego than Gerard has, right? He doesn't care about himself. He just cares about Beyond. He cares about the community here. And so when you talk to somebody like that, you get transformed, because then it reflects just the kind of person that you want to be, right? That people like this exist. So there are many people who are better people than me. Shamil is one of them. Shamil said to me once, he will always stand on the side of the oppressed. And I thought, oh my gosh, this guy will always be a better person than me. Gerard will always be a better person than me. Santosh will always be a better and smarter person than me. And so I'm just so glad that you guys include me in this conversation. I love it all. In fact, oh my gosh, I've not attended any conversation I've had so much fun and enjoyed. None before. This is so great.
Thank you, Justin. We wanted to have Sister Mary here, Gerard, and her time difference is 15 hours. So Sister Mary is the nun that Gerard mentioned earlier, that he counted as one of the women that he had to work with when he joined. So she's done a video, and I'm going to share that.
I am Sister Mary So from the Franciscan Missionaries of Mary, and I'm at present in El Paso, Texas, at the borderland, in my new mission. I'm so happy to be able to say something, to Gerard. I thank the Lord very much that we have had time to work together. We were colleagues and we were friends now. And it has been like 38 years ago that I met Gerard when he was a young man coming to Bukit Ho Swee. I was mission head. and I have, in a way, we grew together. Yeah, it's such. But I think my memories of Gerard, he has always been someone who is not the usual, not the usual, a very special person. But I've known him as someone very, he was, all his heart, all his mind, all his soul is, for the people, Bukit Ho now beyond, as the name has changed to Beyond, and it is really, it's spreading beyond, beyond Bukit Ho Swee. But our focus has all been for the poorest of the poor. It's an FMM mission criteria that he has carried on so beautifully, because when I left as the center coordinator, took over. And at that time, when we were looking for the next leadership, we did try the board, wanted to try somebody, from outside. So we had someone, um, who, who came along, for the post, but didn't last a year because there's a subculture as such in Bukit Swee that you need to gel in. And Gerard was pretty good. And as all of you know, Gerard has a big heart, an overflowing heart for people, for persons, for the community. And I can remember, children and young people, they are really, really taken up with him. As you know, Gerard is very creative, very innovative, and he believes in openness. To each one's talent gives resources, and I think he still works that way today. That is very, very much part of Gerard. And I always admire him for that. And very appreciative of creativity of people, persons. As you see his writing these days also, lately he has been writing. I think it's a gift that Gerard is following up with, and I'm so glad. His wisdom, his heart, his understanding is coming through his writings also.
Yay.
Thank you.
And we have a final surprise. Stella, please come forward. We prepared something for Gerard, which is actually the cover of our of Beyond's 50th anniversary book, with a few lines that he has actually written himself in the book, and we just wanted to give this to Gerard as a
Thanks.
as a nice takeaway of this conversation. I think he's someone who always prefers to be in the background. He doesn't put himself in front to say, I'm leading this organization. And Justin is the one who got him out to actually speak and get this session going. So Gerard, thank you for all that you do, for the heart that you have for the community and your staff team. I think all of us would be nothing without you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. So Justin, do I still have to answer more questions? There are some that are unanswered.
Oh, sure. Go ahead. What else was there?
Thank you. I'm sorry everyone else for having to go through this.
See, I told you, Justin.
No, I thought it'd be nice to, instead of just take from Gerard, give Gerard back a little bit.
Yeah.
Any reflections on what you heard, Gerard?
I think the other thing that is very important for being able to do this work is, and I don't mean this in cynically or tongue-in-cheek or as an insult or rebuttal or anything like that. I think it's to be able to also receive one. So to take something like that and to say thank you really. So thank you very much, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, and having heard Frank treatise on the village elder, I'm so glad we didn't go with fireside chat. My gosh. Does anybody want to ask Gerard follow-up questions or anything?
Yeah, I can just like Gerard, is there something that we can be of service to beyond? Is there something that we can help you with? Like this is like a call out to everyone who is so impacted by your sharing. What can we do to serve your cause? I'm quite sure, yeah, people want to chip in. Yeah, any help that you need, how can we help you serve those whom you serve?
I think the first thing is to understand what we are trying to do first, and what is really very important is your understanding and your patience, because, and I like to repeat the word patience because a lot of things don't move very fast, and like Frank said, I'm terribly inefficient. So, uh, so you know, it's not quite like that. I think we get a lot of offer of gifts, and because we are not an organization, I don't say this is a good gift, let's get it done now. And I take this gift back to the communities, and very often they take quite a while to come back whether they want this gift or they don't want this gift, and that's part of the work. And that puts us in a difficult position sometimes because often the giver wants it reads it quite differently. You say, I'm really giving, why are these people so uh, why are these people not moving fast enough or shuffling their feet? But it's trying to safeguard this, trying to say that, okay, look, what does the community want? And is the community ready to receive this? And try and bridge all that together does take a bit of time. And I ask for patience. So I thank you very much. And one of the things that we want to do is, like I said, how do we make each of the neighborhoods that we work in a lot more unique to develop their own assets. Making so that is one big piece of work. But I have several levels. I have to talk to my colleagues first who are in charge of the neighborhood, what's their buy-in, and then they have to go and try and talk to the people who actually live in the neighborhoods. And so such processes take a bit of time. Yeah. Um, we can do it a bit faster nowadays with Zoom and all that, but it's a little bit different meeting in person.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Santos. I definitely would. I think what you're doing is fantastic about trying to center the voices of the marginalized. That's something definitely I will take you back on, introducing a member of the community to you and see who this person rallies and what type of issue he or she actually brings up. And so that's very important. And what I like about that is you are talking directly to these people. All we did was to bring both of you together. Yeah. So yeah.
Many of the people here also know Gerard. Would anyone like to share any anecdotes about Gerard that we would like to hear about? Things we didn't know before. Ama, don't shy.
There's a question about how do we navigate and embrace the ambiguity that naturally comes with community work. Um, I can only see how we are attempting to do this, and we're attempting to do this by creating a community workplace, and with a very simple view that if we can be community, we need to experience being community before we uh, actually appreciate it for what community looks like outside. Now, what that means, there there are different frameworks, and some of them you guys are quite familiar with. I was in another session, and was it Ethan? Ethan has left, yeah, but he mentioned something about Scotty's framework for community development. And in many ways, I'm still very much influenced by that, because that was one of the early things that I read. Or that was one of my early experiences of community, of a community workplace. Yeah, it was Yifeng who put that in the chat a couple of nights ago, I think. So if you want to talk about those things, I'll be happy to have another conversation about those ideas, what it means to move from pseudo community to chaos to emptiness and then to community. I know the forwards sound very ridiculous, but that is the process for Scotty's process. Yeah. 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 Hey, thanks for your indulgence. Should we be going? Hi, Justin.
I know you're trying to get to your wine. Yeah, so we could call it night. Parting words, Gerard. Do you want to do this again next year?
We'll talk next year. What parting words? I think I'll say that community as an aspiration is not with its ugly head. I will say that a lot of the problems that I have are also because of community. How relationships, sometimes the value of relationships cloud the clarity of thinking. They set up a lot of expectations in terms of how somebody should be or how somebody should be relating with each other, and certain dynamics in a community or in a family also can come in to be quite interfering in terms of a workplace, for that matter, sometimes. So when we want to do this thing about community, right? I don't want us thinking that once we a community, everything is like damn good, it's heaven-like, and everything's moving along. Well, life is not like that. There whatever you call it, there's always a good side and there's always an ugly side. And the interpersonal dynamics very often can interfere with efficiency. Maybe that's why I'm a relational thinker, and that's why I'm never finishing my goals, because too much rubbish in between interfering. Yeah. But the alternative ain't better, so do come.
Yeah, and one thing I remember about Gerard, which was significant about Gerard, is just the emails he writes. Like, okay, I would donate to this charity and I would donate to Beyond, and we will get the same email that gets generated, right? And the regular charities are, thank you for your donation, etc. Like 1 or 2 sentences. Gerard would write this heartfelt, long, extended account of what your money is going to do for the community and the organization. It's like, wow, I'm not going to donate to anybody else from now on. And it's not just that, it's the emails he writes on a regular basis, to thank you. And you can feel that he writes from the heart. No wonder he's so inefficient, because he wants to appreciate you for all the small things that you're doing that you're not really thinking about, but he wants to appreciate you. So thank you, Gerard.
Yeah, thank you for appreciating me. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We'll end here. I'll probably stay back a bit to chat with some of the people here who organized this. But thanks, everybody, and good night. Bye.
Thanks for organizing. All the best.
Good night.
Gerard.
Thank you, Martina. Bye.
Bye.